Hey, everybody, off the top rope here, off the Mike Sports Network. We're heading into WrestleMania this weekend. And AEW had a really good show on on Wednesday night for their 289th episode. Spring Breakthrough was, in large chunk a success, a happy ending, a lot of great matches, some weird stuff. Mercedes winning was a bad idea in the manner that she did. I thought that match was rushed. Josh Alexander losing his first match, but in a good showing and joining Don Callis. We'll see how that works out. But the rest of the show was really, really good. So you would think that AEW would have a much better number than what they did the previous week. They were at 659,000 viewers and a 0.17 in the demo. They went down. And some people will say, well, they were going up against the NBA play-in tournament. Guys, did you see those NBA play-in games? Both of them were not competitive. Both of them were not competitive. Well, the only one that was on actually was Bulls Heat. And those are two brands, but still, come on. The large chunk of people were, you could have had a chance to hook in people. And they did a good job of promoting this show. And it was a well-done show. But the one thing, and this gets to my point, they're still losing out to NXT, which has a bunch of the people that they rejected and showed the door and are now in a much better position, some of which are going to be on Stand and Deliver on Sunday in the early morning here on the West Coast, early afternoon, well, mid-morning, early afternoon out on the East Coast. It's 1 p.m. Eastern, I think, and 10 a.m. Pacific when that Stand and Deliver show starts. But the point here is I saw so many people who are AEW fanboys, geeks, propaganda artists who just want to prop up AEW. Listen, AEW had a good show last night, but let me be clear. They didn't accomplish anything. Look at that rating. That rating is an indicator of, hey, they had a bad follow-up to Dynasty. And yeah, even though they pumped up the show as a big freaking deal, you qualify some other competition to it, they're still losing. Build up a couple more shows before you start dunking on people. Again, I think that this was a fine show, but they've accomplished absolutely fucking nothing. And there are still problems with this company. Mercedes Moné, a current champion, has a chance to win the Owen Hart Cup tournament and go to a Globe Life Field and challenge for the women's world title and hold all the women's championships in this company. That is a problem. Jon Moxley, even though he was beaten, is still the world heavyweight champion, and he ain't losing that title until All In at Globe Life Field. So there are still problems. So I'm not going to have it with these AEW fanboys who are just going to dunk on WWE, say, oh, it's already better than WrestleMania. I was like, shut the fuck up. You out of your mind? Guys, you had one good show. This, on my record, this was the best Dynamite of 2025 by a country mile. Best Dynamite by a country mile. What does that tell you? It is April, at the time of this recording, it is April 17th. The middle of April, and it took you that long to get your best Dynamite of the year. You put on a pay-per-view level card in Boston in front of a great crowd 2 weeks after a pay-per-view, when a pay-per-view was universally panned for its finish, and for a large chunk, it felt like an episode of Dynamite. That was better than that pay-per-view. This company still has problems. Just because you had one good show does not mean that the mission has been accomplished and that the feeling has been restored. Continue the momentum. You've got a collision. And I've already seen a bunch of random ass matches. They might be admittedly good. Collision's actually been okay of late. But what are you guys celebrating? What are you celebrating? Cool. You passed Eric Bischoff. You passed WCW. That company hadn't been relevant in 25 years. And guess what? On their worst episode, they still outrated every single episode of AEW Dynamite. So maybe before you start dunking on people and start celebrating nonsensical things, just because you had one good night for the first time in 2025, you had one good night on Dynamite. You had a great pay-per-view in Revolution. You've had a couple of good nights here and there. But this Dynamite was the best Dynamite that they have had, best probably television show that they have had by a country mile. It is not even close. So if you don't think that's an issue, that's a you problem. And I'm not going to have it with people just telling me, oh, Mike, you're being way too hard. Guys, I expect better from this place because I saw this company at its peak. And you know what that was? That was when Cody Rhodes and CM Punk were there. Guess where they are right now? They're main eventing 2 nights of WrestleMania this year. You don't think that company doesn't miss them? They're never going to admit it because they think they're all better than they think they're better than those guys. But look at Cody Rhodes facing John Cena in the main event of night 2 of WrestleMania. CM Punk's getting his first WrestleMania main event. And everybody just wants to brush aside that these guys are irrelevant. You guys out of your mind? There are still key issues in AEW. Because, hey, look at the ratings. All that great show, and they fell down. They stayed flat in the demo, but they dropped ratings, and they're still getting beaten by the developmental third brand of WWE. If you do not think that that is a problem, you are the problem. So my advice to AEW fans and Tony Khan and everybody else who's trying to celebrate this, shut the fuck up, get to work, and build a great show next week. Keep this going. Keep it consistent. Keep everything flowing. Get us going into Double or Nothing with some great stories and some great compelling television. So that way you can get more people hooked back in and get that viewership number up and get, more people watching the pay-per-view and buying tickets to the Double or Nothing in Arizona coming up in May around Memorial Day weekend. Because if that isn't the case and they don't keep this consistent, then this episode means nothing. It's one night. It's one night. And yeah, WWE has been kind of inconsistent throughout their thing, but the difference is they've built up a ton of equity in the last several years with good storytelling, have brought in more viewership, they've made a ton of money, and, it's worked for them. And yeah, it's, I get that it is an alternative, but there are still lingering issues in AEW. It's not act like, they climbed Everest. They climbed Mount Everest. That's Darby Allin's job. By the way, Darby Allin's kind of looking yoked for that climb of Mount Everest. I don't know when he's coming back, if he's coming back, but that's another separate issue. But let's not overdo this thing and act like AEW actually accomplished something immense yesterday. That milestone, getting past it, like I said, WCW on its worst day, on its worst rated day, still outrated every single episode of AEW Dynamite. You can go look that up. That's actually factual information. I'm not making that up. I looked that up. Keep telling yourselves that this is okay, man. Keep telling yourselves. This is the problem with this company. They are marketing to an audience of one and also like a bunch of internet geeks. That's really what this is. It was a good reflection, and it was a nice finish, and it was a brief reminder of what this company is capable of. My issue is consistency, and they aren't able to do that. They aren't able to keep this up because they just aren't capable of doing it, or they don't want to do it. So those are my thoughts on that. We'll have a lot more coming on the channel. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys soon. Bye-bye.